So what is rainbow fentanyl? For a bit more on rainbow fentanyl, and you've probably heard a bit about this and maybe dispel some of the myths surrounding rainbow fentanyl. We're now joined by Sam Bourdon, the Harm Reduction Grant Fund Manager with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, as well as Vanessa Bernal with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. We're going to get a bit more insight in both English and in Spanish on this. So Sam and Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us. And Sam, I'm going to start by asking you specifically, from a broad perspective, before we get into what rainbow fentanyl is, what is fentanyl from a broad perspective?
Sure. Thanks for having us. So fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that was synthesized in around the late 1960s. It started being present both in the medical field as well as the illicit market around the 1970s. And it's still used today in the medical setting as well as being present in the illicit market. It's about 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine and is a very potent way to reduce pain in that medical setting. And we've seen it all but overtake heroin and other illicit opioids in the illicit market as well.
So with that in mind, what specifically is rainbow fentanyl and how does it compare to, I suppose, regular fentanyl?
Sure. So it's really the same formulation as other forms of illicit fentanyl. It's not been found to be any stronger or weaker than something like the blues, which were that kind of predominant form of illicit fentanyl that we were seeing on the market. It's really not unusual for illicit substances to change in color or shape or marketing style. A lot of that has to do with more increased knowledge from entities like law enforcement around what they're looking for during an enforcement. And so we've seen greater enforcement around that illicit fentanyl. We've seen more recognition of pills and powders. And so it's pretty normal for the illicit market to adapt to try and better transport and kind of evade detection when it's being transported along the illicit market.
So it sounds like it's for evasive methods. So how should the general public, maybe parents, adults in general, how do we think about rainbow fentanyl, if at all, differently compared to regular fentanyl?
So I think when it comes to parents and the general narrative that we've been hearing in terms of concern, really rainbow fentanyl is no different than any other illicit drug. The illicit market is driven by the promise of economic gain. It is not a gainful activity to market to children, specifically because they're typically not, they typically don't have money to buy substances, and they're also opiate naive. And so you're not going to build a customer base from individuals who are at higher risk of overdose. A lot of the times people who are dealing illicit substances as well will change the formulation of drugs so that they can better notify their customers of what's inside of those drugs as well. So if you have two similar looking powders that are white, it's very easy for someone to say buy fentanyl rather than what they intended to buy, such as cocaine or methamphetamine. And so those colors do serve a purpose as well there. But certainly we're not seeing any sort of verifiable case that the illicit market is motivated towards adding young people under the age of 18 as buyers.
So I guess to summarize this, Sam, there's no specific targeting of children is what you're saying.
Right.
And then the other, I suppose, takeaway as well is that rainbow fentanyl, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it sounds like it is basically an adaptation to more easily transport it more than anything else. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And that's been very much why fentanyl has been more prevalent in general. Is it's easier to make. It's a synthetic opioid as heroin is produced from the opium poppy plant. Synthetic opioids can be produced in a laboratory. It's cheaper to produce that way. Since they're more potent, they certainly can be added to drugs to make that potency increase, and they're also easier to transport in those smaller amounts. The branding of rainbow fentanyl obviously sounds appealing, and it has been compared to candy, but oftentimes we see different kind of stamps and markings on different substances, and we have throughout the last few decades in terms of how dealers may choose to market their substances or different drugs may be formulated to add more appeal for adults.
Well, it's super helpful, and thank you so much, Sam. I appreciate getting that insight. I'm going to turn things over to Vanessa, and we're going to swap things over to Spanish now. Entonces, Vanessa, yo quiero empezar con mi primera pregunta, preguntando, generalmente, ¿qué es el fentanilo y por qué estamos hablando sobre el fentanilo tanto ahora?
Muchísimas gracias, Chris, por la invitación. Esta es información muy importante para nuestra comunidad. Y bueno, en términos generales, el fentanilo es un opiáceo sintético 80 a 100 veces más potente que la morfina y 50 veces más fuerte que la heroína. Para tener una sobredosis, esto es importante saberlo, debe ser inyectado o consumido. No se produce una sobredosis por tocarlo.
Y entonces con eso, ¿nos puedes ayudar a entender lo que estamos viendo sobre el fentanilo arcoíris y los riesgos que representan el fentanilo arcoíris, por favor?
Claro que sí, Chris. Como lo estaba diciendo Sam, el fentanilo ilícito fue identificado en el mercado de Norteamérica en los años 70, ¿no? Para darte un pequeño, ahora sí que background o historia de cómo se convierte en arcoíris. Sin embargo, ha tomado auge en los últimos años reemplazando a la heroína y otros opioides. Debido a su potencia y a su costo, el fentanilo empezó a cubrir la oferta de opioides ilegales en el 2017 y poco después se vendía como una pastilla de color azul. Pero debido a que poco a poco ha sido reconocido por las autoridades y también se incrementaron las sanciones del tráfico del fentanilo, se empezó a cambiar la presentación del fentanilo a otros colores y así es como surge el fentanilo llamado arcoíris, esto en el 2022. Así que esto es como fue evolucionando y cómo llegó a ser el fentanilo de este color. Ahora es importante aclarar también que en una reciente entrevista, la DEA, la Drug Enforcement Administration, aclaró que no ha visto una conexión entre el incremento del fentanilo arcoíris y la noche de brujas. Creo que eso es importante recalcarlo.
Entonces con eso, Vanessa, ¿deberemos estar preocupados por el fentanilo arcoíris y cómo deberemos pensar como padres? Y a veces yo escuché que que el fentanilo arcoíris puede ser como un dulce para los niños.
Bueno, aquí es importante entender esto y el mensaje es para los padres de familia, Chris, que no hay evidencia que sugiere que vender o dar fentanilo a los niños representaría una ganancia económica, ya que las personas que tienen nula o poca tolerancia a los opioides están en un mayor riesgo de morir de una sobredosis. Entonces, hasta ahora no hay casos de extraños o de personas extrañas que estén matando o dañando a niños de esta manera a través del fentanilo arcoíris.
Y entonces, ¿por qué estamos viendo el surgimiento de fentanilo arcoíris ahora en Colorado y todos los Estados Unidos?
Como usted me estaba comentando en inglés hace unos minutos, la aparición del fentanilo arcoíris pues no es una sorpresa o algo inesperado, ¿no? Las sustancias ilícitas se han vendido en diferentes colores y formas y evolucionan. Lo que sí sabemos es que es un alto riesgo y hay un alto riesgo en sí y daños con el uso de sustancias como el fentanilo. Sin embargo, la mala información incrementa el pánico entre el público, la falta de disponibilidad para revertir una sobredosis y la estigmatización de las personas que usan drogas.
Y finalmente, Vanessa, ¿qué es lo que está haciendo el Departamento de Salud de Colorado para combatir la crisis de fentanilo?
Bueno, a medida que la oferta de las drogas evoluciona, es importante mantener al público en general informado y también tener estrategias de salud pública para combatir las adicciones. Los esfuerzos, en particular del Departamento de Salud y Medio Ambiente de Colorado, incluyen pues mantener al público informado en las últimas investigaciones y apoyar a las organizaciones asociadas en el impacto y el combate de la epidemia de sobredosis en sus comunidades.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Vanessa. Sam, Vanessa, thank you so much to both of you for your time here today. And thanks for helping clarify so much here about specifically rainbow fentanyl and some of the myths surrounding it as well. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Muchas gracias, Chris.